What if all the noise is not the ending? What if all the shaking is the dawn? What if something beautiful is rising, where the old ways could not carry on? I've been holding stories of survival. I've been wearing armor made of fear, but beneath the weight of all my striving, there is something sacred waiting here. I can feel it softly calling, like a river to the sea. I am not becoming someone new. I am remembering what.
Hello there, One Lovers. Week 3 of our July series, The Sacred Dance. And I know that it's been a minute since we've been here on One Love for our 10 o'clock Sunday morning session. I really thought that it would just work fine to continue to just connect through First Unity Spiritual Campus for our 8:30 service and our 11 o'clock service, and that between the combination of the two, you'd sort of have your pick. But I've heard from a couple of folks that they really would like to participate here, really with mostly a message, and that they can get their music fixed from other places and get the sort of service experience from other spaces, but they wanted to hear the message. And this whole year has been about the Great Emergence, and this is a part of a book that I'm writing. I'm in the process of writing, and also getting ready to release a book that is more of a workbook, kind of a workshop type of book, a 7-week series called Becoming the New Human. But this month, the month of July, we decided to call this, or I decided to theme this as a portion of a chapter from, a couple of chapters actually, from my book, The Great Emergence, The Sacred Dance. And today is moving with flow, and I would like to call it the art of sacred participation. And first of all, let me just say, loved ones, for the past 2 weeks, we've been learning something that I don't think many of us were taught. I know I wasn't. And basically that is that life is not a problem to solve. Life is really a dance. There's a rhythm to get into. And so in week 1, we learned to hear the music. And in week 2, we stopped trying to become the choreographer. I was talking about manifestation and how the how of manifestation is not up to me. What is up to us as individuals is the what, the who, and the why. But the how is left up to the divine, and that's kind of like, even that's a thread that we see in multiple traditions throughout time, but it's also, again, a thread that we see in the AA and the NA movement as well. Grant me the serenity to accept the things, or to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, but the wisdom to know the difference. And so we discovered that manifestation isn't about forcing life to bend in a direction I think it should, but it's about participating with life. But today, there's a very important question, I think, that appears when we say that that's the case and we're surrendering to the divine. There's a very important question that shows up, and that's, if I'm not controlling life, how do I actually live? Because when we talk about surrender, surrender can easily be misunderstood. Some people hear the word surrender and become passive, or we could say lazy. Some hear trust and stop acting. Some hear the word flow and they just sit down and simply wait. But I would say that isn't flow. That's resignation. And there's a tremendous difference between letting go and giving up. So sometimes when we talk about surrendering to God, people hear that means I'm supposed to give up on my dreams and aspirations, or I'm just supposed to give up in general. But flow isn't the absence of action. I'm going to say that again. Flow isn't the absence of action. Flow is the absence of unnecessary resistance. It's not the absence of action, it's just letting go of unnecessary strain and resistance. You still move. You simply stop fighting every moment. Because flow is powerful action without that internal or inner warfare. And to me, that may be one of the simplest definitions of a spiritually mature ideal that I've ever found. It may be the simplest definition of spiritual maturity. And so, number one, nature never stops moving. Nature never stops moving. Look at nature. Nothing is passive in nature. The ocean never stops moving. Trees, they don't stop growing. Birds, they don't stop adapting. In fact, they move with the seasons. Remember, we mentioned that last week. Even mountains, which appear completely motionless, are slowly transforming. You just may not be able to see it. Creation is constantly active. But nowhere does nature seem anxious about becoming itself. The river doesn't force itself downhill. It flows with the natural and gentle pull. The sunflower, it doesn't compare itself to the rose. I mean, maybe that's because they don't have Instagram accounts. But they don't compare or compete. The tide doesn't apologize for arriving late. Nature moves with intelligence, but not hurry. Nature moves with intelligence, but not hurry. There's a big difference in the two. Jesus noticed this. Remember, we said last week that he said, "Consider the lilies of the field. They don't toil or spin, but there's not a single one with less glory than Solomon, who was known as the wealthiest and most wise king." I don't think Jesus is just admiring flowers here. I think he's describing consciousness. The lilies don't strive, yet they fully become themselves. And the same is true for the rose and the river, although it looks chaotic at times. It does. We have whitewater rapids, and then we have settled spaces that are what seems a little less chaotic, but it doesn't strain to do what it does, and when it do, it just do. So number two, we mistake force for power. Most of us were raised to believe more effort equals better results. You push harder, you work harder, you control more, you fix everything or everyone. You manage every outcome. Always stay ahead, always optimize, always hustle, stay productive. And what happens is our nervous system becomes addicted to tension. The nervous system becomes addicted to tension. And eventually, tension begins to feel natural and feel productive. But often, it's just producing exhaustion. That's the thing it's producing. And here's the strange thing to me. Have you ever noticed when you're gripping the steering wheel while you're driving with all your strength that the car doesn't drive any better? Sometimes, in fact, the harder we grip life, the less gracefully we're able to move through it, the less flexibility we have. Gripping the steering wheel is not going to get you where you need to go any sooner, and certainly not any safer. And number three, flow requires presence. Flow requires presence. If we're going to move with the flow, that is going to give us a presence. We show up with less performance and more presence. You cannot flow from yesterday. You can't flow from tomorrow. Flow only exists in this moment because responsiveness requires presence. Reactivity doesn't, but responsiveness requires presence. So imagine, if you would, trying to dance while thinking about last week's mistakes. You're trying to dance freely, but you're thinking about the mistakes that you made, or worrying about the next song that's going to come on. You miss the rhythm completely. You can't dance to the rhythm of this song while being concerned about what the next song is going to be. And I think life works the same. This is why awakened people don't necessarily have easier lives, but they simply stop arguing with every moment. It's not that they don't face challenges, it's that they face the challenges as a congruent person. Instead of asking, why is this happening? Awakened people begin asking, what is life inviting now? So there's more of a curiosity and even an enthusiasm around it. Now, this is a question, I think, when we shift that question to what is life inviting, it's a question that can transform the way we see life. Now, number 4, the body knows before the mind. The body knows before the mind. I've said this before too. The body knows, the soul knows before the mind has language. But the body knows before the mind does. One thing neuroscience has taught us is that the body is reading environment long before the thinking mind catches up. Before the mind has language, the body is already reading the environment. Your nervous system is constantly asking a few questions. Am I safe? Can I soften? Can I stay open? Am I able to be relaxed? Can I be still? Can I respond instead of react? You see, the thing is, when the nervous system is overwhelmed, everything feels dangerous. Everything. It doesn't matter what it is. Every conversation becomes some level of conflict. Every delay feels like failure. Every uncertainty feels like catastrophe. But when the nervous system becomes regulated, something beautiful and harmonious happens. Again, back with the rhythm. There's a rhythm that takes place. You begin hearing more subtleties. You notice opportunities instead of just being lost in opposition. You become creative. Compassion returns. Gentleness returns. Curiosity returns. Perspective returns. Because a regulated nervous system hears rhythms that an anxious one simply can't. Number 5, we flow together. Now, here's something we often overlook, I think. Flow isn't only individual. Just like I said last week, manifestation's not. Flow isn't only individual, it's also relational. Human beings are constantly influencing one another. I've mentioned this to you that science calls this co-regulation. Our nervous systems are really continually communicating. You walked into a room and immediately felt peace. You've entered rooms and instantly felt tension. Nothing had to be spoken verbally, no language needed, yet something had already been communicated, even though there weren't words, because presence is contagious. But so is panic. Calm is contagious, but so is fear. And the question isn't whether you are influencing people. You already are. The question is, what rhythm are you bringing into the rooms you enter? Because your presence and how you present is contagious. And so when we're moving with the flow, we need to think about this. It's important to think about it. Number 6, the great masters knew this. Think about surfing. Surfing. The surfer doesn't command the ocean. They learn to read the ocean. They know they're not in charge of it. They're not controlling the tides or the waves. They don't command the ocean. They learn to read it. Whitewater kayaking, which I enjoy, and whitewater rafting I enjoy. One of the things that Carrie and I noticed when we went to the Ocoee in Tennessee, we noticed that experienced paddlers, the ones who were giving us the tour, they don't try to conquer the river. They learn to read the currents and the eddies. They learn to read it, not try to conquer it. Say this with me. I won't force the river. I'll learn to read it. Now repeat this after me. I won't force life. I'll learn to read life better. I think about jazz because I'm a musician, singer, and a songwriter. Great musicians aren't reading every note from a script. Even if they can read music in jazz in particular, they're not reading every single note. They're listening. They're feeling the rhythm. They're responding, creating in real time. They're being spontaneous and they're able to move together in a rhythm because when you're feeling the music, you're moving with the flow of the music. Now think about martial arts. The greatest masters don't fight force with force. They actually redirect energy. They cooperate with movement. That wisdom is ancient. Don't oppose reality. Participate with it. Participate with reality. Lao Tzu, the writer of the Tao Te Ching, at least it's a legend that he was the writer of the Tao Te Ching, had a grasp on this. For lack of better terms, did you hear me say grasp? As if gripping is the thing you can do. Lao Tzu said, "The soft overcomes the hard. The gentle overcomes the rigid. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, yet for dissolving the hard and the inflexible, nothing can surpass it." Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. Isn't that beautiful? This is Wu Wei, as spoken of in Taoism. 7. Sacred participation. This is where, to me, it gets good. Not that it hadn't been up to this point, but it gets gooder here. Perhaps, to me, the spiritual life isn't about escaping life. A lot of religious expression has attempted to escape life, but it's not about escaping life. Perhaps it's learning to become available to it, more available to it, to become so awake that love knows where and when to move through you. And sometimes it looks like speaking. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes rest. Sometimes courage. Sometimes saying yes. Sometimes saying no. Because check this out, y'all. Flow doesn't always look peaceful. Sometimes love moves firmly. Jesus overturned tables and he also blessed children. Same consciousness, but a different movement. And there was perfection in both responses. So love and flow is not necessarily nice. In fact, I would say it's never nice. It's kind. It's compassionate. Sometimes soft, but also sometimes very direct. And that's participation with life. And it's being able to live that wisdom that gives you the ability to respond perfectly. So this is moving with flow and flexibility and transcending the rigidity that we have been taught to live in. Imagine what your life would feel like if every morning you stopped asking, "What should I make happen today?" and instead you asked, "How is love asking to move through me today?" That is sacred participation. That is moving with flow. That is dancing with life instead of wrestling against it. And maybe the greatest freedom isn't that life finally begins cooperating with you. Perhaps the greatest freedom is that you finally begin cooperating with life. That's a beautiful thing. Instead of you trying to force life, because it's not going to work, to cooperate with you, you become free enough to cooperate with life. Now, I want to share this final blessing with you before we get out of here today. And I wrote it, because I'm mildly obsessed with my Celtic spirituality background. So I wrote it like kind of close to what a Celtic blessing would be. And so I leave this with you today in this final blessing. May you stop confusing tension with strength. May your nervous system become quiet enough to hear the music. May your heart become courageous enough to trust the rhythm. May your body become free enough to move when love moves, to rest when wisdom rests, to speak when truth speaks, and to dance when the Spirit invites. Because the sacred dance was never about perfect choreography. It has always been about wholehearted participation. Friends, as we move through this week, may we learn in this dance how to be more flexible and awake to the flow of life. And may we become surrendered enough to move with that flow. I love you, friends. Thank you for being a part of this community for so long. Thank you for your grace with my absence from this 10 a.m. service. Again, I thought we would maybe scratch the itch all at once with the 8:30 and the 11 a.m. service for First Unity. But some of you said, hey, listen, can we have this at 10 a.m. But again, on the One Love channel? And so I said yes to that. And this is the message we'll continue to share as often as we can on Sundays. There may be times when I'm not able to due to time restraints, but I want to continue to be able to minister to you in the way that is most effective for you. And I'll ask you to consider, some of you continue to give to One Love. I'll ask you to continue to do that. And some of you who have not so far, maybe consider committing to giving to this spiritual community. Also, financially, that is. And the ways to do that will come up on the screen on the way out. Also, I do provide one-on-one transformational life coaching, confidential, transformational life coaching. And I'll tell you something, the people that I'm getting a chance to work with, especially through this time of awakening, what an honor it is to walk that out with folks. The information for that will also be on the screen on the way out. So I have a couple of seats left, just 2 right now, because I'm very mindful of listening to my nervous system when it tells me enough's enough. But I do have a couple of spots, and so I invite you to consider sending an email. Again, the information will be on the way out. And I hear that music getting started, so I'm going to get up out of here now, go and make it a great week. Move with the flow. Bless you.
What if all the noise is not the ending? What if all the shaking is the dawn? What if something beautiful is rising, where the old ways could not carry on? I've been holding stories of survival. I've been wearing armor made of fear, but beneath the weight of all my striving, there is something sacred waiting here. I can feel